One of the hardest things to manage, one of the biggest issues that really isn't talked about much really, is the practice of directors taking notes before a board meeting, during the board meeting, and after the board meeting. Today on Zippy Point.
Quick Zips by Zippy Point.
Quick and dirty. I'm Brock Romanek and I'm a big fan of yous. This topic is a weird one. It's so important, but yet there's very little ink spilt over it. This Wachtell-Lipton memo by David Katz and Laura McIntosh from back in 2018 is the only piece I've actually seen ever written about it. It's not discussed much during panels, at conferences, yet it's one of those topics that's always there that just never goes away. Maybe that's why there's so much silence about it, because it's not a new hot development. It's as old as board meetings themselves. The topic is directors taking notes, and more specifically, those notes appearing in litigation and either harming the director and perhaps the company too by impairing their reputation, or perhaps more insidiously by being a factor in the director or the company losing a lawsuit. I touched upon this topic in my Vid-Guide about board portals, a link to which is beneath this video. Over the years, I've talked to many a corporate secretary who said that they've turned off the note-taking functionality on their board portals, that the board has a policy that directors aren't allowed to take notes because of the risk of the notes being discoverable in litigation. I fully appreciate that risk, the risk that the notes are discoverable, but as I argued in that Vid-Guide about board portals, I simply don't think that type of policy is reasonable. For directors to be fully informed, it's inevitable, in my opinion, that they have to be able to take notes. How else could they possibly process all those board materials, form their strategic thoughts, their ideas, develop them to maturity, and then offer them at the board meeting? You'd have to have a photographic memory to be able to pull that all off without writing something down. At least that's my opinion. Even during a board meeting, a director might need to jot down questions they have about a presentation they're hearing, but they can't raise the questions just yet on the spot because it's not a natural time to ask questions. They have to wait till the presentation ends before they can speak. And if they don't write down the notes about what their questions are, they might forget. I know at my age, I forget things easily, and I'm still a bit younger than a lot of directors out there. Anyway, I worry that if the note-taking functionality is turned off on a board portal, a director is going to take notes anyway when they're reviewing the board materials. They're going to be sneaking that in, and now you're not going to know that they're even doing yet those notes will still be discoverable, and the end result is that you're in for a surprise when the discovery process begins if a lawsuit is brought. So my solution is to allow the taking of notes, turn on that functionality in the board portals, but have a policy about all the notes getting destroyed at the end of the board meeting. You're going to destroy those notes that are on the board portal yourself, and then you're going to train the directors up the wazoo about how their notes that are written by hand get destroyed. That's part of the board policy. If you're lucky, you can convince the CEO or the board chair, get their permission to close each board meeting with a 30-second reminder about the horrors of note-taking by telling an anecdote, a very brief story of what happened to a director that got caught in the crosshairs. You make light of the thing by having these constant reminders at each and every board meeting about how their reputations are on the line, and hopefully the board's culture will support you in your efforts. In fact, a great idea, I think, is to actually have a shredder by the door where the directors exit the board meeting, and as the directors leave, you or one of your staffers gets handed all the notes that the directors have, and you toss them in the shredder as they leave. This will be a very physical demonstration that should really drive the point home. And maybe even have a litigator come in once every few years to make a 10-15 minute presentation about all the horrors of discovery and communications. I should also spend a second here about the sharing of notes between directors, either through the board portal, within the board portal, or by email. Here's an excerpt from that Wachtell-Lipton memo that should scare them about how email is discoverable and what can happen. And in ending, I should mention that I do think it's fine for the board's policy to state that directors are not allowed to take notes after a board meeting. I can understand the desire for the director to want to write down the things that they remembered that happened in the boardroom and happened during the board meeting, so that can help them refresh their memory as they are about to go to the next board meeting. But again, that can really come back to bite them. So here's where you offer to remind directors where, I'll give you, that they can contact you and you can remind them. Of course, you have the draft board minutes, or they won't be final yet because you're going to be approving them and they'll be final at the next board meeting. But you can offer to remind directors about what happened and periodically mention it at board meetings, saying, hey, if you need to be refreshed about what happened, or maybe a director missed a board meeting, you should call them up and fill them in so that another director is not emailing them with notes about what transpired at the meeting. You want to really train your directors not to email each other notes about what happened after the meeting. Anyway, let me know what you think. Also see my other Vid-Guide about director communications and attorney-client privilege, or the lack thereof.